This is the Business Stuff Podcast. This is where I will share the lessons I've learned from advising thousands of businesses over almost 30 years. Each episode will give you practical insight to allow you to learn from other people's mistakes. I'll be pulling in experts from our team and the world of business, and together we'll make sure your business is giving you what you want. My name is Martin, and this is the Business Stuff Podcast. Hi, and welcome to the end of year roundup of the Business Stuff Podcast. You've got Martin, who you know from previous episodes. You've also got James Bray. James normally is the producer on the show. Hi, James.
Hello.
Are you excited?
Yes.
That might be the wrong word.
Well, it's weird. I've sat behind the camera taking editing notes and listened to almost every episode live as it's been recorded. So since Jack's not here because he's decided to inconveniently have a baby. Yeah,
I mean the timing is terrible. Jack, looking at you.
No, I'm joking. We're very happy for him.
We're very happy for Jack.
But Martin said...
First podcast show baby, this podcast anyway.
Exactly.
So we need to do a summary of the year.
Yeah, and since I've listened to them all.
And James has been here through thick and thin. He's the only guaranteed listener to every episode.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yes. And the few in Taiwan that show up on the... stats.
Oh, so we've got an avid listener across
we've got all
Taiwan.
Sorts of countries. Yeah.
We get a strange mix of places that tune in, haven't we?
Yeah.
I like to think that it's probably just someone from the UK who's gone there.
Or they're using a VPN to watch foreign
channels. I never thought about that. They might not want our podcast to show up on their history.
Right.
Right. So anyway, it's been another year of podcasting where, you know, we've had 50 or so episodes. I think there might have been one maybe 2 weeks missed, but we've done a lot of different things this year, and we thought we'd give you a summary of what we've enjoyed, the bits we've taken a lot from. Yeah. And that's where we are, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I've got a few. You've got a few. Do you want to go in first, James, and tell us your first takeaway?
Yeah. So, I mean, when I was looking back, there was kind of like two overall themes that I quite enjoyed. So one was sort of broadly like operational stuff, so systems, processes, you know, the operational side of a business, because that's something we're doing a lot of internally. So
we're trying to do a lot of that, aren't we?
So I found that quite an interesting process, and things I've seen that have been discussed in the podcast that I can see we're actually trying to do like internally. So I've sort of seen it rather than just sort of heard about it. And then also just like business owner stories. We've had quite a few, one or two. But we've had a number of maybe 2, 3, 4 people come on and share their business journey. I found that quite encouraging, and it kind of builds your like faith that you can do it the more that you hear it. Yeah. That's kind of the main thing I always get. There's not necessarily a takeaway point, but it's the combination that you hear them again and again and again. It's just the belief. It's
good motivation, isn't it? You think, it is possible.
Yeah, exactly. Especially from local business owners as well. That was kind of
you said this beforehand. You said one of the things that you were quite. You've heard hundreds of business stories on podcasts, but hearing it from someone who grew up round the corner. Yeah,
because a lot of them are like American stories and so on, which is great.
Well, if you can make it make it anywhere, as the song goes, like this is local people making it locally. Yeah. Which is interesting, isn't it?
It kind of opens your eyes and it's like, oh, hang on, this actually does happen here. It's not just like
Because it's interesting because we just finished an episode. One of the last episodes of the year was with Anthony Hunter, and you know, he, like another couple of the people on there, just had a very normal life.
Yeah, exactly.
Didn't grow up in a world surrounded by business. Yeah. So most of these people certainly didn't have a silver spoon. Yeah. They've had to just go out and do it. Yeah. And it's interesting because at times, I've almost felt some of these people have been not apologetic, but hesitant to say, just do the thing. Right, yeah. You can do it. Yeah. Stop making excuses for yourself. Don't let other people make excuses. Just do the thing. Yeah. And it will be hard and it won't always be good, but you've got to just do the thing. Yeah. And that is a recurring theme from all of the people we've had on telling their stories. Yeah. You know, whether it was Hannah from Cake Stories, who
Yeah.
There's loads of good stuff. As an outside observer who's watched Hannah from day one, within the first week I was in her coffee shop buying her cake and her coffees. I've been a big supporter and fan of hers. But she talked about how she had some really difficult times, thought she'd overstretched. But actually is now, one of the, a very comfortable, good size supplier of what she does nationwide. You think, that's handy, because she was just a woman who liked baking cakes.
Yeah. But what I've noticed is it doesn't matter what the business was that we've sort of interviewed, all the stories that have been a scale story, even though they're different business like products and services, I've noticed very distinct patterns, like same hurdles for each one.
Absolutely.
And that's been really interesting. So they both talked about, staffing issues, scary milestone, buying your first premises and all the
finance
stuff.
Opening your first branch, your second branch.
Yeah.
Or for Neil, getting your second van on the road, your third van. So it's been interesting, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Let's get into them, James. I mean, that's interesting, because one of the things I really enjoy is interviewing someone about the business.
Yeah.
Especially with someone I know, because I think, well, I know what's coming here. But there's always something that I think, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And these are people I know fairly well. So I really do enjoy these. But who's your first pick out then?
Cool. Well, since we're on that one, I'll start with a business story first. But Neil McGregor. Yeah. So we did an episode that I titled something like "From Working for Free to Scaling a Business."
Yeah.
Which is a cheesy title, but it was actually the truth. He literally worked for free.
Literally what he did,
which I found very inspiring. But the point that I got from that is just there's absolutely no excuses, none, because he literally worked for free for other people just to develop a skill, to the point where he said he even went home, so he was living with his parents at the time, and he would go home and in his bedroom he works in construction, property renovations and so on. He would go in to his room and practice plastering his own wall, and did it so many times that the walls are probably 12 inches thick, he said.
Just practice.
Just to practice.
Yeah.
But it was my takeaway from that is, if there's no opportunities out there, well,
make an opportunity.
And he did. And it was just, I've never really heard a local story that, someone that's done that.
Because Neil is someone where there's a lot of people see his vans all over the place now, but Neil is very consciously set out to change from not having a business or any real aspirations. Wrong word, but Neil was your classic Geordie lad up to all kinds as a kid, just not thinking about work, life, family, house. And then just had a massive change in his approach, and it started by just doing the thing. That's what I've just touched on with Av. So we'll show a clip of Neil now where he talks about that.
So I always kind of wanted to get into construction, but because of some of the issues I had through school, I couldn't get an apprenticeship or anything like that. So what I decided to do is, I would ring, because I couldn't get an apprenticeship, I would ring up other trades and just sort of say, look, can I come work you for free? I'm not bothered about getting paid, I just want to learn.
So give us experience.
Yeah, give us
like an intern.
Yeah.
In an office environment, so you're intern, but...
It was kind of like an apprenticeship. I was trying to give myself an apprenticeship by just working for anyone for free, basically, and then with the skills I learned, I would then go home. I was still living at home with my parents at the time. I'd kind of replaster my bedroom over and over again. Luckily, my mum and dad kind of let us get away with that. I
remember you saying once you used to just practice replastering your wall.
Literally. So if you chip them walls back now, they're probably 12 inches thick, to be fair. So and then I kind of developed that skill set. We'll continue to work with people for free until eventually I got to the point where I was like, right, okay, maybe I could start working and doing some of these jobs by myself.
You build up the confidence to
not just the confidence. I think I was always relatively confident. I was never scared of doing anything. The problem was there was no skill set there. I had the confidence there, but I wasn't very good at actually doing anything. So it took a good few years to kind of get any sort of skill set underneath my belt and stuff like that. And then, like I say, once I, this didn't just happen over a couple of months, like I say, it was, it happened over years.
So like you say years, you were working for free for years, or were you literally
I pretty was working for free for years. So I had a pizza delivery job that would kind of, give us the money that I need while I developed my skill set.
Just spend the day mixing mortar for other people, doing that, then delivering pizzas by night.
Exactly that, to be fair, which, to be fair, I was a pretty decent little pizza delivery boy. Like I could make pretty good money. I was, I'm not saying I probably broke a few sort of traffic laws getting pizzas to people in time, but I was pretty damn good at it. So
no pizza was delivered cold.
No, I done well. I got decent tips. So, but no, that kept us going.
You must have been working like a lot of hours then.
Yeah, so
you were busy.
Yeah, so one thing, just because I struggled in school and going to school and stuff like that, one thing I was very good at from an early age was working. So I was working at I was working weekends at 12-year-old, 11, 12-year-old and stuff like that, doing sort of. I did some landscaping with one of my friends' dads at the time. He had his own business, so I was never scared to get my hands dirty or anything like that.
So you weren't scared of putting effort in?
No, I've always had an exceptional work ethic.
It was more about having somewhere to put the effort in.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So like we were saying, James, great there. Like I say, no excuses. My next one is one of our more recent episodes, and I've already kind of alluded to this, but Anth Hunter. So Anth again, he's a local lad now, but he's from Scarborough. In his upbringing in Scarborough was probably not a million miles away from Neil's or mine or your own in Newcastle. Yeah. And that again, there was no silver spoon. He wasn't surrounded by a lot of people who were in business, who knew business, who were doing anything. Yeah. His one inspiration was, there was one person in his town that he knew. There was probably lots, but he didn't know them. But there was one person who he thought, they're doing something different. Maybe you can. Yeah. And the thing I like about that is you don't need loads of inspirations. You just need the one that inspires you to do something different. Yeah. You don't have to be surrounded by 50 people. You could have one person to aspire to be or to work towards, I suppose. Yeah. And I really like that. But the thing that he alludes to, and he covers a similar kind of theme to Neil, but in a different way, is just about taking a change of clothes, working before you go to work, do your day's work, work after you've been to work, and then work your Saturdays and Sundays. Yeah. While you're young, you've got the energy, and you can do that. Yeah. There are certain things where you will get there quicker the more you do it. Yeah. And people know that, if you want to be an expert on the guitar, it takes 10,000 hours. Okay, well, the more you practice, the quicker you get there. Yeah. A lot of businesses like that. Yeah. The more you do of it, the faster you learn the mistakes and learn the tips and tricks that'll get you there. And you can just blunt force your way through those times by putting hours in. Yeah, and that's interesting because you don't think of business as something that you practice. It's like something you do, but you do. You learn it, right? You could read it, you can be taught it, but actually doing it is just a great way of getting in. So anyway, here's Anth talking about how telling you, I suppose, his daily routine while he was building up his first properties in his empire. But it wasn't then came away from the course and then that was it. No. There was still a lot of application and hard work and graft, wasn't there? Unbelievable. And I think... And you're doing this whilst working full time? Yeah. The schedule was... So, I'm so grateful towards Tamsin for just letting this happen. And support and not... Yeah. Looking back, I don't know why. I mean... She stuck around, to be fair. I was never there. Yeah. So I used to go, first thing in the morning, I might go for a run at 5, get to the property for 6, work at the property 6 till 9, get to my first appointment. Being the investment property. Yeah, the investment. The one that needs the wallpaper stripped. Yeah, exactly. All the unskilled labour that, when you go into property, there tend to be two types of people with money or people with time. We had time. Oh well, we didn't even have time. We thought we can make time. We can create time if it's important. So we'd go 6 till 9 in the morning to the property. I'd try to get to my first appointment for 9:30. Do 5-6 appointments for Envirovent. Take my lunch with me, my breakfast, my lunch, my tea. Finish at 5:30. Go straight to the property for 6. Property 6 till 10, and then home
showered, straight to sleep, and do that. And then Saturdays we used to get there for 7.
Just be there till he went to sleep.
7 till 5. Come back on the evening, get a takeaway, whatever with Tamsin.
Yeah, this is it's interesting because a lot of people I know and probably have done exactly this journey, and people. It's funny because you hear, oh yeah, but you're lucky. It's like, I didn't feel very lucky at the time. I felt like I had to really grind that out.
A bit of luck.
so me and Rebecca did this. You know, when we had kids, we stopped buying property.
Yeah.
And people used to say to us like, "Oh, when you have kids, you'll wonder what you used to do." I was like, "I know what we used to do. We used to do that."
Yeah. Well,
we didn't do the morning bit. We would then just have a change of clothes every day after work and go and be there till midnight, 1 o'clock.
So the next one for me is a guy called John Paul. I can't remember what I called the episode. I was thinking I'd written it down there.
Yeah,
but something about. But basically, the overall theme was systemizing your business. So what I kind of got from his episode is he talks about every issue in the business is either a process issue or a person issue. If it's a process issue, is it really the process, or is it the person's failure to implement the process properly?
Yeah.
And if it's the person, and he put it in a nice way, he said it's either a skill or it's a will. So they're just being disobedient, or
they can't do it,
or they
can't teach them, or they just don't want to do it.
Yeah, or it's a training issue or something like that. That was quite a nice way for me to separate how that works. But
go on.
Well, to summarise, like what he explained for me, which I'd never really thought about before, was I thought it was just process, and then there's people and it's a separate thing. But actually, processes, there's no such thing as a process without the person to function it.
They're intricately linked. Yeah,
that's what I really learned from that. Yeah.
What an interesting takeaway from that, James. I don't know if you've thought about this. Then is that was also John taking full responsibility and holding himself accountable for everything that happens in his business.
Yeah.
Because notice all of those things were within his control.
Right,
it was his process after all.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't blame the process. It's your process.
Yeah.
And you can't blame the people. Once you admit the people failing is either your process isn't clear, or you haven't trained them, or you have the wrong person.
Yeah.
Well, again, they're all in his control.
Right, because if you blame the person, he employed them.
You are the one who lets them come in and not do it.
Yeah.
Or you're the one who hasn't taught them. You're the one who's got the confusing, process that makes no sense. So I like the personal responsibility element of that, which isn't your obvious go-to, but process people, but also the fact that he owned it. He knew it was him and he could fix those things.
Yeah.
So here's John talking about that.
So you systemize a business by writing the training material, writing the procedures. You then got to train your team on them.
Yeah.
You've then got to audit your team to make sure they're following the rules and doing what you say you're doing.
Test and measure, make sure they're actually
doing it. Test and measure. You then got to feedback the results, and then based on what the results are, you've got to review. Because is it a person issue that something's gone wrong, or is it a process issue? There's only two things when something goes wrong. Either a human messed it up, or the process wasn't good enough. If it's a human that messed it up, if it's you or I, then there's another two options it can be.
They've either ignored it, or they didn't know about it.
So it's a skill or a will.
So it's ignorance or ignored.
Yeah.
Ignored is willful, they've done it.
Exactly. Skill or a will.
Ignorance is they just didn't know about it.
We call it skill or a will.
Skill or great.
It's exactly the same thing. So then if it's a skill, you train them. If it's a will, it's a motivational issue. It's willful, like you said, then that's a different conversation.
Yeah, so that's John talking about the process side. Now I've also got a pick from John while we're on John. And again, local people. John's a little bit further away than some of the others, but he's still a local lad. You can still tell from his accent he's a northerner.
Yeah. Sounds more northern than me.
Yeah, to be fair, he sounds like he lives closer to me than you do.
Yes.
But John has got, for me, he's got an interesting way of putting things that I've heard 100 times before, but saying it in a way that makes sense.
Yeah.
So there was two great points in here. We'll only show one of them, but there's two great points. One of them was rag your roles. Now, when we were growing up, not to give too much away from when I was younger, but if you drove a car erratically, you were ragging the car. Right. So rag to me was like, like to do something violently or with a lot of energy or whatever.
Yeah.
Or you would rag something about if you shook it, so rag. So rag just sounds like a Geordie word to me.
Right.
But in his context, it was red, amber, green, and he was talking about the roles you do in your job and identifying the ones that you should stop doing immediately.
Yeah.
You should, with a bit of training, a bit of onboarding or offboarding, get rid of in time, and the things that you should keep doing forever. It was really important, like rag your role. I loved that.
Yeah.
And it was quite a good stark reminder to say, if you're not getting somewhere, and it's because you've got 10 hours of work to do every day, and you like to get through more.
Eliminate, automate, delegate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There will be things in your day that you're doing that you should not be doing. They either don't need to be done. Don't automate it if it's irrelevant.
Yeah.
Don't waste time automating the process that should be eliminated. And there's all of that, and it just summarised really succinctly and rag your role for me.
And he even said, like, and you asked a sort of follow-up question, like, oh, well, what if you're self-employed? How do you get around that? And he was like, well, you've got VAs and personal, virtual assistants, so they can do all your invoicing, your
email handling,
booking
call
appointments,
handling,
etc. You can employ someone and train them to do your job, and within time, it doesn't all have to be immediate, but he said within a year, it doesn't matter what you do, he can guarantee he could get you out of it just by following that process.
By just strictly implementing that logic, So I love that. But my takeaway from though probably comes back to your people process, the fact that you are responsible for the people you employ, or your team, or the subcontractors. Ultimately, you make the decision to keep them doing it wrong.
Right. Yeah.
And he said this in a way that I've personally never heard this or a variation of it. Although I know the concept, I've never heard it said in such a simple way. And he said, so you've got someone who just isn't getting it.
Yeah.
So you think, it's quicker just to do it yourself.
Yeah.
But then he said, but when you're teaching your kid to ride a bike, you don't they don't fall off and you just go, get out of the way, get on the bike and ride it off, do you?
Yeah, no.
And as soon as he said that, I thought, wow.
Yeah, I love that, yeah.
Well, of course you don't.
Yeah.
You say, never mind, son, or pet,
Yeah.
Right, we nearly had it this time, try that.
Yeah.
And it's quite interesting that we know that on those things, there is only one route. There isn't an option where there's people out there whose kids can't ride bikes, but their parents ride their bike for them.
Yeah, exactly.
Even saying it sounds ludicrous.
Yeah.
There might be kids who would never ride a bike, but that's a different thing.
Yeah.
You need to teach your kid to ride the bike if they want to ride a bike. There isn't another plan B.
Yeah.
So why is it then in business we so often take the plan B of, and I'll say plan B because plan A should be teach your people to do things well. It's better for them, it's better for you, it's better for everyone. Why is there ever a plan B in business?
Right, yeah.
It doesn't make any sense, does it?
Oh, you're doing that wrong. Right, well, I'll do it then.
I'll just do it then.
Well, why did you employ them to do it then?
Yeah. And it's interesting because we've done a lot of episodes with Jack where we talk about what drives people, motivates people, annoys people. Most people have heard the saying, you don't leave a job, you leave the manager. And there's this whole fulfillment thing in a role where not teaching that kid to ride that bike in the work context is probably just creating a disillusioned, upset workforce.
Right, yeah.
Which then compounds the fact that you didn't take the time to get them to do it right in the first place.
Yeah.
So I love that. I'd love to know what you think. But here's John on riding a bike, I suppose.
What a lot of business owners do, and this is where they can't, the mindset and they're the bottleneck, is if they ask somebody to do something, they don't give them the relevant training, they don't show them how it's done. When the person fails, and they will fail, right? Nobody's got a 100% record. As good as you think Newcastle are, they're not going to have a 100% record. It's just not going to happen. So they're going to mess up. But what people do is give it back. Come here. I'm going to do it. It's quicker and easier. In the short term, it is, but it stunts development. It stunts growth, and in the long term, it's a nightmare. So if you just go back to the Bellad riding a bike, You know, she's literally just learned. What happened is, guess what she did when she took the stabilisers off? Fell off. What I didn't do is get out the way, I'm going to do it for you.
And just like, this is how you ride a bike, you just ride away.
You just give it, you get extra training, hand on the seat, on the handlebars, don't be frightened.
Give it another go, I've got you.
I've got you, don't worry. You're going to fall, but don't worry.
Because this really vividly leads into something which I haven't thought about until I was just saying there. Because the job as a team lead, you're part of the team, but you can still be the team lead.
Yeah.
Is to facilitate the performance of your team, isn't it?
100%. Yeah.
It's not to claim the glory. It's not to be the glory.
Yeah.
It's not to be the best in the team. It's to get the maximum productivity, efficiency, team spirit of your team. So that was John on bike riding.
That was John.
What you got next then, James?
So we did an episode. Well, you did an episode with Jack on discovering your motivations, I think we called it, or something along those lines.
Yeah.
So I've heard, I don't know how many times, if you read self-improvement books or, I don't know, that kind of thing, or watch that kind of content, you'll have heard the idea that motivation and discipline, motivation lasts a period of time, but discipline is what allows you to kind of, and I don't know how to explain it.
Well, I've certainly heard that discipline is better than passion.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Passion gets you going. Motivation is,
Yeah, but discipline actually allows you to see through the thing that you're kind of motivated by. Yeah. Motivation can wane. And that's kind of up till that point as far as in-depth as I heard the argument. And then you did an episode with Jack, and obviously Jack does, this isn't like a plug necessarily, but just he does a sort of motivational maps exercise with clients where he sits them down and they fill out a survey, and it has a lot of sort of metrics to score yourself against, and from that it gives you a pretty detailed report on where your motivations lie, and it's scarily accurate as well.
It is, yeah. So it's interesting at this point. I always think, James, just to distinguish this from behavioural.
Yeah.
This isn't how you're going to respond to a thing. This is the why you do the thing.
Which is also why it's unique. Yeah.
Yeah, it's different because everyone knows. Not everyone. A lot of people have heard this idea of disc profiling. Oh, I'm an open, passionate person.
No, it's not that at all. No.
Motivation is: do you want to be the expert? Do you want to build? Are you looking for wealth? Are you looking for power?
Purpose.
Like how you do it is the behaviour, but what you're doing and why you're doing it is the motivation.
Yeah. And no, exactly. And I'd never really discovered that before.
Yeah.
And so we sort of did that episode with Jack, and one of the things he talked about, which I thought was something I'd not really heard before, was this idea of job crafting, as he called it. So once you've sort of been through this exercise, and you know what your motivations are, you can use that to kind of tailor your role in a way that makes what you do much more motivating to you, or more fulfilling without necessarily changing what you're doing too much. So for example, if you realise that you're motivated by, say you've really got the heart of a teacher, and you like, you feel like you've got expertise that you can pass on, and that's something that you kind of are motivated by helping people with. And say you're a manager and you know that this particular team member is motivated that way, well, get them involved in training the new staff, or
you don't need to lose the person who's lost their passion in their job. You can just tweak their job to take away some of the things they don't like and give them more.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you might be compelled by being the lone expert, or you might be the team player who wants to share knowledge. There's probably a role for both of those types of things in a big enough team. So why don't you lean into it on the other people? Yeah. And the idea of job crafting is just tweaking those little things.
Yeah.
To let you do.
Yeah. But you don't even necessarily have to. So I think one of the points he made is that a lot of managers don't necessarily realise that. Well, first of all, they don't know how their staff are motivated, but also you don't have to change the job. Sometimes it's just, so say someone's particularly motivated by They want to see the results of the work that they're doing. And you've got all sorts of data on, the client success stories that have happened as a result of the sale that you made or something like that. And that's never shared with the member of staff. Well, of course they feel demotivated because they're doing the role, but they never see the result.
They never see the product or the outcome,
So when you have catch-ups with them, just build into your catch-up, this is the result of all the work you've done.
Yeah.
This is what this department's done as a result of your contribution.
So it's
simple things like that.
Because the job crafting there isn't changing the job in any way.
No.
It's just letting the person in on the thing.
Exactly.
It costs nothing to share that with them. Yeah. No, it's interesting.
Yeah.
And I suppose if you're motivated as being the expert and you get an awesome feedback from your customers about that person, just pass it on. They will be grateful that they're getting good feedback, and they won't use it for vanity or money, because they might not be driven by money. They might just want to know that what they're doing is seen as the expert piece.
Exactly.
Well, here's Jack talking about this point. I've lost my flow on motivation.
So we use a tool called motivational mapping, which essentially is a questionnaire, and from that you can glean, and it's a series of kind of questions with polar opposite responses, and you have to put somewhere on that scale how much you agree with, sit on that scale essentially. So you go
strongly
through
agree, strongly disagree type.
And from that you can glean kind of what motivates people. You can also glean how motivated they are in their current role, and that can be given as a percentage score. So they could be 80% motivated in their role currently. What's also interesting is that we can get a score on how well engaged they are within those motivators. So we can get a ranking of what these 9 motivators and which ones are the strongest, which ones are the weakest, and how well they're engaging with those ones. Because if they're not engaging, if their role doesn't allow them to resonate with that motivator, then they're not going to be particularly well motivated. Likewise, if they're engaging a lot with the things that demotivate them, then again, that's going to have a negative impact on their motivation.
But what utility does that have then, Jack, as a team lead? Is it fair to presume then, once you've got this data and you can go, Jack is a searcher, Marty's a glory seeker, whatever.
I haven't heard of that one yet.
Sorry. James is the expert, right? Okay, then at the minute they're all doing exactly the same job. I presume you would then say, well, actually, if you like doing that bit, Jack, why don't you do more of that? And we now know Marty doesn't like it. You stop doing it.
But even as simple as Martin's a star, right? Well, got to make sure that I put an arm. You've just manufactured that, so I'd have to say that.
I did. James, that's the short.
That's the short. But I would know as your manager, right? I've got to put an arm around Martin when he's done something and say he's done a really good job, because he would benefit that more. Likewise, James is the expert, right? Well, I'm going to go and make sure that he has the opportunity to go off and do some extra training courses. Jack, you're the searcher, right? Well, how do I get you in a way where I feel like you're making more of a difference? Maybe I might take you to a couple more client meetings so you can see at the front end what we're doing. So it provides so many useful ideas in terms of small things that you can do, which doesn't necessarily materially affect the role, but it's also kind of a management tool as well.
So, Jack, motivation. I should have said as well, you can obviously view all of these episodes by just searching through our catalogue.
Exactly.
We're up to 100. We've been going a couple of years now. There's 100 plus episodes. So there's something on most things. You can dig them out. My next thing is what was a chat I had with a lady called Danica, so from Danica S Copywriting, and her slogan is that she writes words that sell. Copywriting, it's a niche within copywriting is what she does, but particularly she works with businesses to help them have websites, brochures, literature, letters, follow-up call, whatever it is, that convert prospects into sales.
Very interesting what she does.
And everyone knows that this is a thing. You know that that there's a psychology behind, the phrase that makes you buy.
Yeah.
But what she said that was really interesting to me is one of the things she does is she will reach out to people who have bought, and she'll ask them what was stopping them from buying. So this is really interesting, because a lot of market research will reach out to you, James, do you need a dog lead? Well, I haven't got a dog. No, right, okay, right. You're going to get a dog. If you do you want one of our dog leads? That's a silly example, but we're reaching out to people who haven't bought yet to ask them what they want to make them buy. Once someone has bought and they're a customer, we'll ask them what they liked about what they bought. But what we don't do is there's a bit in the middle of before you bought, what was stopping you from buying. Yeah. Because if you can overcome that obstacle, there's a whole raft of people out there who haven't bought, who it's not that you're not giving them the thing they want, it's that you haven't figured out what's stopping them from doing it. Right, yeah. Now, I might not have explained that very well.
No, I know what you mean, yeah.
But yeah, it's
like objection handling in sales.
Yeah. Well, maybe not. But we're not asking what the objection is, because we're not... Yeah. That's probably the nearest... Yeah, objection handle is the nearest that I've come to it. But it's the objection handle is, well... I suppose the point is here that, the expertise to getting this done well is that the person might not realise what their objection is. Right, yeah. Or was. Yeah. Unless you kind of get that out of them. Right, yeah. And I just thought that was quite interesting. I thought it was a different slant on something that I hadn't really thought about. Yeah, yeah. Because everyone's focused on trying to sell the benefit of something. Yeah. Rather than figure out why, like they might want your product all day long. So telling them how good the product is isn't going to get rid of that barrier, is it? Yeah, it's almost like I don't know if this is along the same lines, but I heard someone talking about focus groups once, and how someone that's inexperienced in doing them will ask questions like, why do you want the product, or just do you want the product first of all, and then when it comes to, all right, here's the product, get your wallet out. Oh no, I'm not interested. All right, well, why? We've just said it was a great product. Yeah, and it was and that's almost one way of saying, right, well, what are the objections? How do you? Yeah. What actually are the objections? Because you told me you like the product, but do you? Danica will do a better job of explaining this probably, hopefully. So here's Danica taking you through the importance of finding out why people didn't buy, but asking them after they have bought, which I think is the really interesting bit. Yeah. What is the biggest mistake people are making when they're writing their content for their conversion then?
They're not talking to their customer first.
It's as simple as that.
Simple as that.
They're talking about them, not them.
Exactly. They
if that makes sense.
Yeah, they need to talk to their client. I've had a couple of these, done several of these interview processes where my client realized that they are buying me for a completely different reason. I had one client who's a dog walking service, and she thought that people were buying because they felt guilty about not walking their dog, but it turns out it wasn't about guilt. It was about pride, and it was a little bit about snobbery, and
was it like for a dog walker?
Yeah. Yeah, so because it's fancy.
It was like a show thing, was it? I was going to go, I bet it was guilt. But yeah, that's interesting.
She thought it was guilt. She was like, okay, they feel guilty for not walking their dogs.
Because they shouldn't have got a dog. They've got a dog and they need a dog.
Now they need it, yeah, because her level of service is that she charges $80 for a 2-hour dog walk. It was a revelation for us. Like, we were both like, whoa. So we always make a guess before we go into the interviews and talk to the people.
I wonder if it's this. Yeah. So how did you get... So that we're probably like... I don't know, actually, I literally don't know how we're doing. But because you don't just walk in and go, why did you get a dog walker? Well, actually, I wanted my friend to have its best life. Like,
how do you get there?
That doesn't just come out.
No. So it goes back to that interview where the questions that we ask are really open-ended. And really, you don't find out that information unless, as the interviewer, you don't say anything and you just wait for them.
2 ears, 1 mouth, and all that.
Yeah, you just wait for them to start talking. And what you begin to understand is what they believe about themselves and what they believe about their place in the world. And those things start to come out. So for me, what I then do is I stick that all on a spreadsheet. I start to look for data matches where other people
Analyze,
say this too.
Yeah. They said they love coming in, their dog's exhausted because it's been run ragged, it's had a good day, makes them feel good. Right, maybe it's not, right, well, there's something there.
Yeah.
They all said that.
Yeah, it's because they are thrilled that their dog is
It's like
thrilled.
the usual suspects, isn't it?
Yeah.
You interview all of the, you look for the pattern and, yeah. Yep, so that's Danica. Again, full episode available. James, what have you got next then?
Next, so I think the first guest to return on the podcast and do 2, other than like yourself and Jack, who feature every week. Alfie Joey. So we had him back again to talk about something completely different, but something he's very experienced in, which is public speaking.
Yeah.
And he wasn't necessarily talking about public speaking, he was talking about communication and how you can kind of tailor your communication ability in business settings and so on. But there was one, so it's a great episode, but there was one particular point that I thought was very practical and very useful for me.
This felt like a cheat, to be fair,
like
didn't it? This feels like it should almost be illegal. It's not, but this feels like it's such an obvious thing that. But go on.
So he talks about he called it snooping, was this idea, and so basically Alfie used to work in radio for what was it, BBC Radio Newcastle, doing the breakfast show.
Breakfast show for years,
and he mentioned that this might not be true, but it was something along the lines of the show got to a point where it was the most listened to radio station
outside of the capital, or outside of London or something
like that, or certainly the most listened to breakfast show.
When you say it might be true, you just mean you might have remembered the exact, but
I'm not just making up random facts, but
we're not saying Alfie was lying on the show.
No.
He did certainly suggest that Radio Newcastle, him and I can't remember his co-presenter at the time, but they were sweeping the board nationally, let's just say, on listener numbers.
And he basically gave away the secret as to how he did that. And it wasn't marketing spend, it wasn't, some kind of promotional thing. It wasn't guests.
It wasn't prized.
Although some of those things may have been included, I don't know. But what he mentioned, and he attributed seemingly all of that success to, was what he called snooping. And to him, what that was, so he said his manager, boss, whatever
producer,
the word would be,
producer, a line manager, someone above him anyway,
would listen into the radio stations, listening to the radio show, and of course you would have like the recording and listen back to it, but he would listen back to it with Alfie and his presenters. So they would listen to a segment and then he would say, right, Alfie, what did you think of that? And you've just heard yourself, you can't lie and say oh yeah, that was awesome if it wasn't, you've heard it. Because it's very different when you're in the moment, you think it's good, and then you watch back and it's like, oh actually it didn't quite come across how it felt in the moment. And basically what he repetitively got Alfie to do was listen back on a regular basis to what he'd done. Consistently.
Yeah, they didn't do this a couple of times.
No.
This was something they did consistently.
And make Alfie be fully honest with, were you 100% happy with that performance, the way it came across, the content, was it interesting, whatever. And over time, just doing that process again and again and again, he just improved, made these improvements each time to the point where he became obviously very listenable and popular and that's kind of how the station grew.
Just crafted the
It
art.
just made it interesting to listen to.
And I didn't think about this at the time, but this is a bit like probably from like the 80s onwards, professional football teams would watch back their matches with their manager and go, see that there then, James?
Yeah.
He ran straight past you.
Yeah.
Got to keep an eye, right? And if he's doing that, and we take for granted now that there'll be that after match commentary and punditry.
Yeah.
What's really interesting here is, first of all, the brutal honesty of it. Like you say, there's nowhere to hide.
No, and it's not fun watching yourself back, is it?
And also, it's not a team of 11 here where you kind of go, yeah, but Marty didn't cover me back. It's like there was two of you there. It was one of you two that did it.
Yeah.
Or one of you two did something great. Let's have more of that. Because this isn't all a negative thing. This is a positive thing. No, if you take this with a positive attitude, it could be again a superpower, which I don't think enough businesses do this.
No.
So I know there's this idea of secret shopping or mystery shopping where you get an external person to drop in now and then.
Yeah.
But how often do you do that? Have you done it?
And do you do it to yourself?
Could you do it? And do you watch yourself if you're the subject of it?
Do you listen to the Business Stuff podcast?
Well, yeah. Oh, no, I mean, to be fair, no. I do sometimes. Yeah. I do sometimes, to be fair.
I know it does, because once I was in the car and it came on.
I was going to say, yeah, of course. Yes, I am Tom Cruise watching my own films. But interestingly, I don't know if I was subconsciously doing that, thinking, would I listen to this if it wasn't me?
Right, yeah.
And we're just beginning, we're a couple of years in, which sounds like a long time, but we are still finding our way in this. But certainly this idea of snooping, I think, is a fantastic idea, and it's a good shout, James.
Yeah.
Here is Alfie on snooping.
It's really important, and it was great to hear when I came in that one of your team said, watch the interview again the other day. I think that's where you learn. That's almost the only place you can learn, really. If you're doing a podcast or if you're doing stuff that is recorded or YouTube, you must go back over it, even though it's a bit awkward and some people don't like the sound of their own voice. My old radio boss, who was absolutely brilliant, used to do something called the Snoop, and he did it every Wednesday.
You just listen in for a bit, would you?
And it was forensic. So what he would do is he would say, right, we'll do a lucky dip today, and we might listen to us at 8 o'clock to 10 past 8. And he'd say, right, let's see what 5 Live or Radio 2 are doing between 8 and 10 past 8, and we'll score who got the most out of those 10 minutes. 10 minutes is a long time in the radio.
All they listen to. Yeah. It's easy to be on phone for 20 seconds. But
10 minutes is a long time. And you got, I was talking too long there. And he would do the Socratic method. He would get us. He never told us we were rubbish. We would hear it and
that's interesting.
Or he would do us against one of our competitors, Metro, or us against BBC Tees. So it would be, we'd be roughly have the same subjects or the same news stories would be breaking.
What emphasis did you put on the leadership election?
Absolutely. Have you mentioned the weather, the travel, something newsworthy in those 10 minutes? Have you told people who you are?
Why are people listening?
Lead people by the hand. And he just constantly, he never missed that. And that was always at first it was a painful thing, and then it became a brilliant thing.
So you're thinking at any point, anything I say might be that 10-minute window.
Yeah.
So
it's all got to be good. All of it should be good.
How does that correlate with, you see anybody on Graham Norton and they go, oh yeah, I don't watch my films.
Yeah. I don't believe them.
There you go.
I don't believe
that answers that then.
Yeah.
So do we just agree that they do watch the film?
My favourite singer is Frank Sinatra, and he once said, if I go around somebody else's house, I can't stand listening to myself. But anybody who'd been to his house said his music was playing all the time.
That's why he was sick of it. That's why he didn't want to hear it in your house.
Yeah. I think, how can you know what you sound like or look like unless you watch it back? And I tell you what's interesting now. You go to a comedy club. I did comedy on Friday and Saturday, and the younger comedians now, they've all got tripods, cameras. They are watching themselves over and over. They're growing audience like that, but they're also studying themselves.
So yeah, that's Alfie on snooping. Now, just for clarity, when I said it feels like it should almost be illegal, I just meant, obviously snooping could sound like I meant something else, but this is just watching back. It's watching your recording of your match, I suppose, and doing it. And I would love to, I'd love to hear from anyone what they think their version of snooping would be in their business. We should probably game this, actually, James. We should come up with what we think.
I've thought about before. I'm not saying this is an issue I've seen at Robson Laidler, but I have seen in context of teams I've been part of, where I've thought where someone's like leading a meeting, and I've thought if you recorded this, if this was recorded and you watched back on this meeting, would you really be happy with the way you spoke to some of those team members? Because they don't realise the way they're coming across.
And do you think you gave everyone a fair chance? Did everyone get a chance to participate?
But when you're in it, you can't. It's not that they're trying to be like that.
Oh yeah,
you can't. You don't notice.
To be obstinate or rude or bullying or harassing.
But that was the point of the snooping. Was
to watch it back cold.
Yeah.
Without
third party.
Yeah, without the feelings attached to it in a dispassionate way to say, was that as good as it could have been? Yeah. So no, I love that. My other takeaway, just while we're talking about Alfie, who I think we could all, I think if you're in business, that his 2 episodes, so the first one was Changing Lanes.
That was one of my favourite episodes.
Which is great, because Alfie, if you don't know Alfie, you might not know or care who he is, but he's done some staggeringly different jobs.
Yeah.
And somehow seems to manage to find the secret formula to make them work. Doesn't he? And when he went into radio, I'm pretty sure he said he'd never really done radio before. No. And then just ended up, running one of or being part of the team that had the, most listeners outside of London or whatever it was.
He even said when he was talking about that he would get to there was someone that was doing like the afternoon show or something, and he would turn up before the person who was on the radio before him, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've got the order right.
Just the prep. So I think he was the morning show, but if he started at 6, he would be there like before the one who was doing the 3 till 6 shift or almost. He would just put an insane amount of detail and thought in.
But when you're saying like he found the secret formula, I know you don't mean like he just stumbled across.
Yeah.
But it was through
sheer
effort.
When I'm saying he found it, no, he worked on that secret formula.
To find it.
Which interestingly is something that we said about Neil and Hannah, any of the business owners we've had on, David, the recruitment guy,
David Bolton.
Was this Bolton? Sorry, David, that's terrible. But these are all people, probably from previous years, like Raman Siegel. Like these aren't people who stumbled on the secret formula. No. They ground away until it was revealed to them.
Right.
So I didn't mean any slight there with Alfie. He worked at it, and he worked it by his own admission. I think in the second episode he says when he's interviewing someone, he goes far too far. Like he puts an extreme amount of time in, doesn't he?
Yeah.
He talked about interviewing the guy who did the Everybody Loves Raymond. I want to say Jim Rosenthal, something like that. And he talks about how he had so many pre-prepared questions in areas that it might go into. And I'm sure he said, and most of it never went anywhere, but I was ready if it did.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
And it's just like, he didn't just think, I'm going to turn up and blag this.
Yeah.
He turned up and nailed it. And it wasn't by accident.
Yeah.
One of the things that he talked about in his second one, so we're talking about communication, and I'm always really interested in how people can be an introvert but yet a good speaker.
Right. Yeah.
And I think you do this pretty well, to be fair, James.
Yeah.
Not calling you out as an introvert or a good speaker.
I've heard all this before. I know what you mean.
Yeah. But
I thought about it myself.
You're there now doing this, and yet you would quite happily just sit behind the scenes and just not volunteer to be out there.
Yeah.
And I'm always curious as to how people can do that. And we ended up talking about, he said he'd watched a TED talk from a lady. So it's kind of her point, to be fair, but we're going to show Alfie talking about it.
Yeah.
And he talks about some basic hacks, cheat codes you can use to portray confidence
Right, yeah.
And one of them was just really, really so simple, because you think, oh, well, you know, I imagine your audience naked and all of that. I'm not sure that would help some of the audiences I've presented to. But if you just want a boost of confidence, you know, there was a lady who talks about, just before you go out on stage, you know, somewhere off behind the scenes, in the corridor, around the corner, in the cubicle, in the gents, or the ladies, wherever you want to be, make yourself big, take a deep breath, you know, do that a couple of times, and your body will get a rush of some kind of energy, endorphin, or some kind of hormone will flood your body, because, you know, you can trick your body into giving yourself that little bit of confidence.
Right, yeah.
And it was so simple, and I thought, that's really interesting, because I hadn't realised, but if I'm talking, I always do this thing where, like, I pretend I'm tucking the back of my t-shirt in, even if I'm not.
Right, yeah.
And I don't know if I've just instinctively stumbled on the point that, you know, make yourself tall, and it will give you the energy to get through it, you know.
That's interesting.
It might not be enough if you're scared stiff and you're horrified by it.
Yeah.
But if you're doing it anyway, going in with a bit more of that in your pocket is probably not a bad thing, is it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was such a simple thing. Anyone's got time to do that before you do anything. So we're pulling 2023 to an end here. We've got already some excellent speakers lined up, excellent guests. We've got some really good business stories coming up. I always feel at this point, where we did one of these last year, and I felt a bit bad for the people who didn't get a mention. It's not that we didn't think what you had wasn't any good. People will only listen to us for so long.
No, it's not a highlight if you put every minute of every.
If we just mention everyone, it's a rundown, not a. So we've just picked the bits that apply to us. I would like to know what you found, you know, was your most important bit, your best bit, the guest that you liked. And I normally finish by asking my guests a question, don't I, James? As you know, we haven't talked about this, but so I know some of the people we've got coming up and some of the areas that we're planning on covering. I suppose my question to you is, like, you know, what's your hopes for the podcast in what's going to be year 3, believe it or not?
What are my hopes for the podcast?
Yeah. Obviously, you know, sponsorship wouldn't kill anyone.
Sponsorship.
And some product, merch, you know, we're not asking for too much, but...
Do you know what I was thinking about? It would be really, really cool. So I learned recently that the Diary of a CEO, their podcasts are played in prisons. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
Wouldn't that be awesome if the Business Stuff podcast, but something that's so practical,
was inspiring, as part of a rehabilitation process.
Hearing from local business owners, you know, I think that'd be awesome.
Well, I'm pretty sure there's...
So I want us in prisons.
You want us?
Not us, but the podcast.
Long before your time, but I know you're a music fan, so Johnny Cash, of course, played a prison, didn't he? Was it Folsom or something? Quite a famous gig from Johnny Cash. He played in Folsom Prison. You never know, James, we might do an episode live from prison.
Hopefully not.
We'll see where we end up. Yeah.
Hopefully, because we've been invited to do an episode, not
invited in rather than held.
Exactly.
No, that's interesting because I wasn't expecting that answer. Well done, James.
No, star answer.
I don't often get flummoxed. But I suppose that would be nice to think that we're...
Yeah.
Because the hope for doing all of this is that people learn and they can become better as a result.
Yeah.
Even if all they do is learn from our mistakes.
Yeah.
Which I think has its own value.
Yeah.
But I was just presuming this was the free people of England and Wales and Scotland and Ireland. But I suppose you never know.
Yeah. No, but I mean, a serious... Well, there's a serious answer. That would be cool.
Yeah.
But...
if we can't get there...
If we can't land ourselves in prison... what do I see for the podcast?
What's your favourite style of podcast episode then?
Favourite style? What, that we've done or just generally?
I don't know, what do you want us to do more of? I personally love the business stories. I really do like that.
Yeah, no, I will, not just to jump on what you just said, but definitely that. Like I said, particularly local business stories I find interesting.
Yeah.
I remember not that long ago when I think I just turned 19. I had my first job doing sales, and I literally couldn't believe, I was staggered that I'd never seen any entrepreneurial environment, if I could say it that way.
Yeah.
Just where I lived, or even in the UK, my mindset was that all the content that had got me into business was all produced by American people, and I just associated business as America. That's kind of what I thought, which sounds weird. But then I got a job doing sales, which is, of course, and it was like a multi-level marketing company, and very like entrepreneurial and slightly controversial the way it was ran as well. But
not by you.
But no, but to see like an extreme of that environment, but I'd never seen it before where I'm like from.
Zero exposure to it.
I was just like, whoa, and it was like in an office in town.
Yeah.
And now I work at an accountancy firm, and I've got to meet some, business owners from all over. So it's all still in a way like quite brand new to me. So I'm still very inspired when I hear like local people or just people from just the UK who have started a business. To me, that's in and of itself, I know it sounds simple, but quite fascinating to me.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's what I say to people all the time, James, and this might not be quite what you're trying to get at, or might not be on point. But I was having a conversation with my son the other day, who's 14 and a bit, and we're trying to like get out of him what he wants to do when he leaves school and whether he wants to work for someone who, and he's 14 and he's a lad, so he has no idea. He's got
to play Minecraft at 14.
He's got a rough kind of trajectory, and that's it, but I try to say to people, probably because I've been working at Robson Laidler and for 30 years now, I've seen all kinds of people come through the door and achieve all kinds of nuts stuff. Seen people go from literally, two blokes in a shed, and I mean this literally, two blokes in a shed, selling their business out after, they're making probably £500,000 a year each, just before sale, and then selling out for something like 12 or 14 million quid. They went from two blokes in a shed, an actual shed. We've followed that whole journey, right? I mean, I'm still here, obviously, so I didn't learn too much from them, but we've seen that kind of story. And what always gets me is, I don't think you have to be Steve Jobs or Elon Musk or or Branson to do it, because most people are just not doing it. Which sounds weird. But for you to stand out in business in your environment when you grew up, doesn't sound like it would have been that hard, because nobody was doing business around you.
Right. Yeah.
So doing it at all puts you in a class of hardcore triers.
Right. Yeah.
And then if you think about this, which might sound quite a defamatory thing to say, but if you think of most of the people most of them aren't that sharp, are they? Do you know what I mean?
I know what you mean.
I don't mean that to be a bad thing, but most of the people are a good portion of them you wouldn't trust to walk your dog.
Right.
These people are in business. So if you think, I just have to be someone who someone would trust to walk their dog and give it a go, and I'll probably win at it. Yeah. That's a really unusual way to say it, but there are people out there who make business work despite themselves. Right. If you get a good wind at it, you've got a remotely decent idea or a really good work ethic, you really can make a massive difference. And this is something I feel really passionate about. I don't see any reason why, as a lad from a council estate in Gateshead, I don't see any reason why any of the other lads or lasses from that same council estate can't quite easily have a different life that they never even imagined.
Yeah. But it's the lack of exposure. That's what I'm kind of was touching on before. Like the fact that I've grown up in
it's not like you saw it and thought, I can't have it. You just didn't think it was there.
It was oblivious. No idea. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's just the problem a lot of the time. But also when you were saying about like, it's not, you don't have to just be Elon Musk and Steve Jobs and all that. Yeah. Well, they're the ones that get all the publicity. So that is your exposure a lot of the time. But if there's someone that grew up, there was what's the book, like The Millionaire Next Door or something, if there's I'm sure there'll be business owners on my estate that I never met.
You just don't know they're in business.
No, exactly.
Well, I don't know if it's a particularly northeastern thing, but I didn't even know there was such a thing as business growing up. It wasn't mentioned in school. We didn't have, of course, have YouTube and Instagram making us jealous of everyone in LA with their amazing, lives and everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, maybe instead of prisons, we need to be listened to in schools, James.
Yes.
Maybe we need to do a school road show.
And interestingly, I did do business in school, and I was still oblivious.
Still didn't know it was...
Because they teach things like the basics of like accountancy and some like business skills, but they don't teach like entrepreneurialism, if that makes sense. So the idea that you can actually go out and start a business, that idea just wasn't touched upon.
Yeah, I mean, you might argue it's assumed, otherwise why are they teaching the business? But maybe sometimes you should say the assumed bit, say it out loud. Yeah.
I mean, certainly the idea of like someone coming in who actually ran a business, because none of the teachers had ran a business who were teaching me. You know what I mean?
Maybe let's set our goal on.
So I think schools
or as a minimum colleges and universities for sure. Yeah, let's see. Should we make a deal, James? Should we try and...
I think prisons is a good goal. That would be quite fun.
Well, we wouldn't know if we're being listened to in a prison, but we might have a better idea of knowing whether we're listened to.
Fair enough.
Please feel free to write in if you're in prison right now. Write in and let us know what you're planning on doing when you get out.
Wouldn't that be meant, like someone who's a prisoner and then they come out and they're like, "Oh, I've listened to your podcast and I've been inspired to go into business to make a change." Yeah.
Well, yeah, I've not even thought about it that deeply, but I always hope that what we're doing helps people.
Yeah, but let's start with schools and colleges, like you say.
I haven't visualised the people we're helping, but yeah, I'm happy to help anyone, James. Listen, we've I've certainly enjoyed doing the podcasts. I can't speak for you, but I think you enjoy your part in the podcast, James.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. We like doing it, so we're going to keep doing it while we've got one listener. As long as we've got a listener, we're going to keep doing it. But yes. As always, we do always say, please let us know what you want to see on the podcast. We're doing it for you, so let us know what you want to see. Reach out. If you know someone you think would be a great guest, reach out. Maybe self-promote. If you think you'd be a great guest, reach out. You never know if there's something that's worth saying. We'll get it set.
Yeah.
But for now, we hope you've had a good 2023, and we hope with our help and a bit of hard work from you, we'll have a great 2024.